we have some information about the very prominent in the vegan community, Rynn Berry, who was an American author on vegetarianism and veganism, as well as a pioneer in the animal rights and vegan movements. We'll tell you more about him as the program goes on. Jeff has a memoriam.
I'm here to honor good friend Rynn and to show love to Christina.
Thank you very much. Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris. I was a close friend of Rynn Berry. We put together the Vegan Guide to New York City. And through Rynn, I met Jeff Tucker in Homestead. That's when and Jeff was courageous enough to dive into the freezing pool. And I just watched him and said, oh, not my day today. So I'm here to honor Rynn Berry.
Yes.
And to hear what everybody wants to share about veganism.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. We look forward to hearing anything else you want to share later on. And a quick question for Jeff, VeganMan. How could you be in a freezing pool in Homestead, Florida? I don't know what time of year. You don't know?
It was so long ago. They came down around 2005, 2007. What was it, Chris? Yeah.
Well, it does get cold here, but not freezing, you know?
I think you misheard that. He said he was homeless and shooting pool.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hi, I'm Saurabh Dalal, and I want to thank Christina for sending this invitation to join this great event, and being Rynn's birthday, Rynn Berry's birthday, and a celebration and tribute of his life, I thought I would join. So anyway, thank you guys in Miami, I guess, for organizing this. And I actually did know some people from Miami, or say many, many years back. But anyway, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm in Maryland, and been friends with Rynn Berry probably since the early 90s. And also I spent a fair amount of time in Brooklyn. And so I got to know Rynn and Christina well, and yeah, been involved in a number of organizations. And so anyway, just thank you for hosting this event, and glad to be a part of it.
And again, your name is?
Yeah, my name is Saurabh Dalal, and I'm from Maryland, and I spent a lot of time in New York City as well.
Not Deepin.
Is it snowing already in Washington?
It sure is. We have about on the ground about 3 or 4 inches, and
Ooh.
I just got done, clearing it out as much as possible, and so yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Deepan, any good luck with the audio?
I hope so. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep, and see you.
Okay. So Stu, you had my name correct. It is Deepan.
Someone else mentioned it earlier. I think it was Chris. I may have mentioned it. Yes,
yes, she did.
Yeah.
I've known Christina, and through Rynn, actually met them at the same time in New York City, and had pleasure of enjoying their company. Haven't seen Christina for a year now, maybe more, because of the pandemic. But like Saurabh mentioned about the snow, we're awaiting that up here in New Jersey, New York. And I've been a lifelong vegetarian and a vegan for now 10 years. It's my first time with this group. So I'll be here short. Unfortunately, there's dinner time at 7:15. So, but wanted to wish Rynn a happy birthday. And I hope he is, enjoying himself with all the animals and whatever he loves to do, wherever, in heaven. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Deepan.
It is with a heavy heart that we make this feature of tonight's dinner potluck. And I want to acknowledge the fact that we have a number of special guests who are here for that reason. they're always welcome to come back. And but I want to get right into into Rynn Berry. Behind me, over there is a picture of Rynn. Can you all see that? That happened to be something I held up when Estelle and I did a presentation. It was the most important presentation of my life. Maybe Estella would agree that it was hers too. But we were invited to the International Vegetarian Union Veg Fest down in Buenos Aires 4 years ago. And as part of my presentation, I booked an actress by the name of Estella, and I booked an actor that was recommended by Rynn Berry, highly recommended by Rynn Berry, to play a particular role, which is, of course, in the Mona Lisa smile. Who would that be? Who would the male lead be? I'm giving some clues out here.
Leonardo.
Leonardo da Vinci, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't think that Rynn Berry was just a playwright who dabbled in his last couple of years with some and created some one-act plays. That is certainly not the main breadth and depth of his work for global veganism. But it is the one that was sexy to us and it caught on. But I think after I finish what I have to present to you all, that maybe Deepen and Chris and others will share other aspects of Rynn's life. But if you don't mind, I'll sort of carry the ball for a while, since I wanted the format, I want it to flow, and I want to get a lot of information to you all about Rynn in the short time. So I have known Rynn for quite a few years, like 2 decades or so, 2.5 decades, and I think we heard about his record of accomplishments as a writer, historian, and he's written some of the major academic works on vegan religion, veganism in historical perspective. He's chronicled the lives of many great vegans, and there are many. But I'll sort of focus on the 6 plays that deal with Tolstoy, that deal with Dr. Kellogg, the guy who invented cornflakes, and Pythagoras, and of course Leonardo da Vinci, and a few other notables, Buddha. So Rynn turned his hand to writing these short scripts, and Estelle and I picked up on that. The first time that Rynn presented his playwright persona at the big annual gathering in Pennsylvania with the North American NAVS. Many of you may have been there at one time or another. This is one of the biggest vegan conferences in the world, certainly in the United States. And one year, Rynn says, come into my room. Everybody had rooms for the presenters. And he was going to debut a play that he wrote. And he handed out the scripts, and a tall gentleman picked up the script and said, "Let me play the part of Leonardo da Vinci." And the other parts were taken, all volunteers, and the room read the play, enjoyed it, and afterwards we commented that the guy who played Leonardo da Vinci was like too damn good, you know. He was like not a volunteer sitting in the room. He was like a professional actor. And so it turns out that he was actually a voice coach from Hollywood who just happened to be in the room, or maybe it was planned. And he read the part of Leonardo with like precise and imaginative phrasing and diction. Okay, could somebody, Arlen, could you unmute? Could you mute? Let me just, thank you. Anyway, getting back to the story, we were all very impressed by the play. And the next year, we were kind of hoping that guy would show up to play Leonardo again, but he didn't. So I stuck my hand up and I took the part. And you know, I had some theater background, but in any case, I became Rynn's favorite Leonardo. Now, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want you to think that this play was done, you know, all over the world and got all kinds of reviews. It was a very well kept secret. Only if the play was just getting out there. And a couple of years later, we invited Rynn to come down to Tamarack, Florida for our big monthly vegan dinner, which Linda and Stu is the host over there. Kathy always had a presentation over there. And so that night, we made Rynn the master of ceremonies. I brought in some real actors and we had volunteers. And we did several of his plays. Really, it was a great tribute to Rynn, you know, to kind of announce his role as a playwright in the vegan movement, not just a historian and so on. Now, what really makes this kind of not just news is the fact that that was in October/November. And when we finished that weekend, we did that twice with Rynn. He was the host and he was the master of ceremonies, and we kind of made him the director of the whole event, and he would bring out and introduce his plays and we would do them. Well, that was October, November. As Chris would probably know with some accuracy, about 3 months later, we got bad news. We got really bad news that Rynn had he had collapsed running in Central Park. And he was a runner, a swimmer. He was running in Central Park, collapsed. Was it a stroke or a heart attack, Chris? Chris will tell us later, but Rynn was picked up in Central Park, brought to a hospital, was unidentified for some days, and he passed in that hospital. In other words, a few months after he had come down to Florida, stayed at my house, you know, done his debut kind of as a playwright. So I was very touched by that. And I promised that I was going to do his plays whenever I could. And, you know, and Estella felt the same way. We made Rynn, do you have the graphics too of the donor 365? We made Rynn the honorary, kind of the honorary person of our organization called Friends of Vegetastic Art. And we have Friends of Vegetastic Art, a meetup group. We have, we've done many performances. We have a webpage documenting all of that. And so Rynn is the cover boy, the cover figure of that organization. I'm looking at a picture of it. If Stu, you don't have it, we won't see it. That's okay. I'll put in some of these links so that you can look at these pages later on and follow that. But getting back to Rynn, I'd like to run this little clip, and I'll keep it short. I don't want to make it the whole play. I just want to run to give you a feeling of what this picture behind me represents.
Era Rynn Berry, era uno de los líderes intelectuales y autores en el movimiento contemporáneo vegano. Escribió libros como así de grandes, fantásticos. Discúlpeme. Él murió hace unos años. Rynn Berry falleció. Pero queremos, Stella, por favor, puedes subir. Queremos hacer algún extracto de su obra que se llama La sonrisa de Mona Lisa. Por favor, esperen. Esta es mi compañera Stella Wing-Walker. Pueden haberla visto hoy, hace 2 días, y también esta tarde. Va a ser una presentación distinta para niños y familias. Pero vamos a hacer esta obra bien corta de un gran vegano llamado Leonardo da Vinci. Tenemos que tener esto y hacer esto, pero bueno. Vamos a intentar hacerlo para ustedes. Mona Lisa es ella, Leonardo da Vinci soy yo.
Sostener esta sonrisa. Quiero captar su dulzura misteriosa.
Tú me evocas esta sonrisa, Leo. Cuando te hablo, estoy fascinada por todas tus actividades tan disímiles.
Me gusta mantenerme ocupado. Era Aristóteles que dijo, la energía es el principio regente de la vida.
No sos más que energético. Escuché que hiciste un disfraz de murciélago y te tiraste del techo de Casavecchio. ¿Es verdad?
Sí. Estaba probando si se podía sostener esas alas maravillosas en el aire. Quería volar arriba de la tierra y ser libre de esta tierra.
We are going to read a play by Rynn Berry, who wrote a series of incredible one-act plays about famous vegans. This one is entitled John Cornflakes Kellogg. And the scene is a doctor's consulting room at the Battle Creek Sanitarium in the early 20th century. That will be 100 years ago. A slightly hypochondriac patient named Mary is imploring Dr. John Kellogg, the greatest abdominal surgeon of his time, to operate on her. But Kellogg, unlike modern medicine or medical doctors, views surgery as a last resort. He actually tries to talk her out of it. And here we go, trauma.
All the doctors have told me that I have gastroenteritis. Since you are the world foremost abdominal surgeon, I'd like you to operate.
Before I operate, I want you to try changing your diet for a week. If the symptoms persist after 10 days, then I will perform the surgery.
I repose all my confidence in you. I know that in all your years as a gastric surgeon, you've never had a mortality. To what do you attribute your unequal record?
I attribute it to the fact that I put my patients on a vegetarian diet before each surgery, which often obviates the need for surgery. And then I take the precaution of washing my hands before each operation, something that many other surgeons neglect to do.
Well, I would much prefer to try your vegetarian diet. I see that I am in good company. Isn't that Henry Ford, the motor car manufacturer, and Montgomery Ward, the department store magnate over there? What will breakfast be like?
My patients normally start the day with fresh fruit and a bowl of flaked cereal, such as Kellogg's Corn Flakes and solarium sunbathing in the nude.
Will the men be present while I'm sunbathing in the nude?
Don't worry, Mary. We have segregated facilities. The patients attend lectures on vegetarian nutrition, and of course they have 2 vegetarian meals a day in the same dining room.
I'm a 3-meal-a-day person.
We overeat in this country. There's nothing sacrosanct about 3 meals a day. Our ancestors, who were sturdier and healthier than we are, took 2 meals a day. That's the program we follow.
Well, thank you. Hello, Shri. Thank you for indulging us and letting us share some snippets of the theatrical side of Rynn. Chris, if you don't mind, I'll continue kind of leading the memoriam, or would you like to step in and request people to share memories of Rynn? I'm thinking that I'd like to hand the mic to Deepan and to Sarab, and of course Arlen and yourself. And why don't we have you 4 begin a more in-depth look at Rynn and share your feelings about him. Is that okay, Chris? Okay.
Yes, sure.
Can we start with you then? And then you can hand it to one of the others that I mentioned. And then after those, maybe other people who are not here specifically for Rynn's will want to add something. So please.
Yeah, sure. So Rynn, I met Rynn in 1991. And when he used to go to the Green Market Union Square, because he liked to meet his readers, people who bought his books, and talk to them about it and hear what they wanted to share. And I met Arlen, Sarab, and Deepin through Rynn. And Rynn, he was part of the vegan guide that already existed, but the original authors, they decided they didn't want to have part in it anymore, so they left for Rynn to take over. And then Rynn invited me, why don't we put up the vegan guide together? So he did, of course, he did 100% of the work. I'll just help him review the restaurants and taste the foods and I just wanted to share when he decided to write the short plays, because Rynn was a public speaker, and we decided, why don't we take a course on acting for beginners? And so, okay, that's a good idea. Then when the teachers said, each one of you, you're gonna choose a play and then you perform it towards the end. So then Rynn decided, why don't I write my own plays? So that's when he decided to write Leonardo da Vinci. All his plays are based on his books, his works, and Famous Vegetarians and Food for the Gods, Vegetarianism in the World's Religion. So that's how the play started. And he had one that wasn't published, that he was ready to publish the next year, 2014. He passed in 2013, which was a Portuguese doctor, because he visited Portugal. He gave talks, he performed his plays in Portugal, in Brazil, in Canada, and in the US, in several places. And then when in Portugal, he was studying, he was writing a book about, that wasn't published, about history of raw foods. And so when in Portugal he was doing research, and he found out there was a Portuguese doctor that had connections to Brazilian groups of raw fooders, vegan raw fooders in Brazil. And then he wrote that play about this vegan raw food Portuguese doctor, but he never published, he never performed. So it's hidden inside one of his computers. So I'd like to hear from Sarab and Deepin and Arlen. I would like for them to share any memories they have, any funny story, anything that they would like to say. Sarab.
Sure. Thank you, Christina. There's just so much to share about Rynn, and I met Rynn, I know exactly when. It was in 1993, and it was in Portland, Oregon, when we were at a conference together. And Rynn, being the, just the scholar that he was giving a talk, of course, on the history of vegetarianism. And, we talked, his talk was brilliant, of course, and he's written a number of books, as Christina mentioned. And in that talk, he had mentioned something about the Jains, the Jain religion. And I was raised in the Jain religion, of course, being a lifelong vegetarian. And so I had asked him a couple of questions, and then after that, we had a long conversation. And that was immediately the beginning of a beautiful friendship that lasted all the years. And as it turned out, I, being from the DC area, but I was working for the city of New York. And so I was actually up there. And then I had heard in late 2013 that, Rynn had, as Jeff was mentioning, that Rynn had collapsed and he was in the hospital. I happened to be only about 10 blocks from that hospital. So I actually went to see Rynn while he was, not in a conscious state, but still alive. And over the years, we've had many good discussions about, philosophy and various historical figures. And that was kind of a great interest of mine, was for the history. And being an avid vegan, for me, that was also very important. And his appreciation of the Jains. And so I felt honored to be able to be there before he passed in those final few days to actually recite some Jain prayers that I knew he, his soul would have responded to. And so I felt very fortunate to be there in the early days of January of 2014 and before Rynn passed, but to be able to recite some of the prayers that he also, felt were very powerful. And just a beautiful friendship and a beautiful human being, and just did so much great work, and all the writings that persist today, and so much that he's done. I will mention one story which I think is kind of funny. And Rynn was always just promoting all the great reasons to be vegan. That was also my passion. And in 1997, I organized a kind of the first Veg Fest in DC after many, many years of not having a Veg Fest. There were some in the 1980s. And so Rynn was invited down, and a number of other people. And we had another friend who Christina also knows very well, is from North Carolina, Dilip Barman. And Dilip was a vegetarian, but he obviously had all the inclinations of being a vegan. He just wasn't. And so Rynn and I remember at a particular meal, we just kind of looked at Dilip and said, Dilip, we predict that you're not only going to be a vegan, but you're going to be an incredible promoter of veganism. And that's going to happen, in the next month. And we talked a lot about this, and Dilip sort of laughed and smiled. And sure enough, within a couple of months, he became totally vegan and became a great promoter. This is just one sort of example of how we were joking and saying, you think, that you don't really need to, you're not going to, or whatever else, but I believe you are. And we both kind of believed that he was, and he did right away. And so, and now we joke to this day that, Rynn and I helped you become vegan, and look at all those people that you've affected now because you've, taken it and really run with it. So anyway, just a few little things about Rynn, and again, so much to say, but, just an incredible human being, and just did so much scholarship and research and speaking to kind of put vegetarianism in an important context. And everything from the world's religions to historical figures, from antiquity all the way to people in the present. And so for that, I'm really thankful and honored to know Rynn, and may his Atma, may his soul be in a peaceful and loving place wherever he is. And we know exactly what he's doing wherever he is. So, love you, Rynn, and thank you all for organizing this event. I don't know, Deepen? Anyone who wants to go next?
Sure. I first heard about Rynn actually through his book, The Vegan Guide to New York. That's the name of the title, right, Chris? If I'm trying to remember. Yeah. And I bought a couple of copies, and enjoyed visiting the restaurants. And you mentioned, and over the years, I would see Rynn and you, Christina, at Union Square at some animal rights events. But I really got to know you guys through Saurabh. I remember one time I bought a book and I didn't have money, and he said, "Okay, you can pay me next time." And a year had elapsed, and I came back, and I had given him money exactly at the same spot where he was. And and Saurabh mentioned, he's Jain, I'm also a Jain, and I had told him that, at that point he didn't know I was a Jain, but I said, my karma, would be attached to yours. And he laughed, and we laughed together. He's like, yes, and after that, spending time, the last memory that I remember very fondly is Christina, Rynn, Saurabh, and I, we went to Peacewood Cafe in New York City. And we had a wonderful dinner. We spent close to 3 hours enjoying ourselves. And quite honestly, it's like I would say, I want to eat something, and he would agree, and he would say something, and we would all agree. So, that has been my memory because it was such a fun moment of the four of us being there. So, and so those are my memories. And thank you for introducing me, Saurabh and Christina. Thank you. And unfortunately, I must now leave for dinner, but I wish everyone the best, and have a good night.
So, Arlen, are you ready? Just say what you would like about Rynn. Good things, of course.
How about now? Okay. First of all, Roberta Schiff sends her best. She says that she's sorry she couldn't make it tonight. Rynn, okay. I like smart people. All right. So Rynn was interested and is interested and will always be interested in pretty much everything. So we had a lot of different experiences together, and past events and travels that we had. We discussed a lot. And one time I took him to a Reconstructionist, that's Jewish services in Brooklyn, just to see how he'd feel about it. And he was well at home, as in many places, as a traveler. And I understand that well. Rynn he was there with you. And even if you weren't there, he was still there with you. So blessings and happiness.
So, Jeff, I'll turn it back to you if anybody else would like to say anything about Rynn.
Christina, if I can just add one more thing, Rynn, loved to speak. He loved to engage people. And what I really remember, as I think several people alluded to, is, the travels. And Rynn, was extraordinarily well-traveled. He went to so many places. He was invited to give talks. And that's one of the memories I'll always have, is that, and Chris, of course, you and I also, and, we went to many places, across the world, really trying to help, say, younger vegetarian organizations, or part of the International Vegetarian Union and events there, whether it was across this country or across, the continent, or even around the world. And so, we had, numerous great trips, and I was, still involved in the International Vegetarian Union. So I'm one of the counselors. And so I would, love to have Rynn involved in these events. And so that was just another memory that I have, is that his, just as being an avid traveler, and really wanting to go and to really seek out, people and cultures, and really engage. So definitely a very fond memory and part of Rynn.
Could we just go into a little a little more depth about the major works that he accomplished. You know, I often refer to Rynn as the guy who writes books this thick, you know. But one of his most important works was the revelation that Hitler was not a vegetarian. And I wanted to really press him on that point. I wanted to be darn sure that he had it right. Of course, you know, he had done the research, and I just love, you know, to bring up that little historical fact. You know, Hitler was such a propagandist, and you know, he would lie about anything if it was to serve his cause, and so he used to pretend that he was a vegetarian. But Rynn actually published the dishes, the favorite dishes of this monster, you know, one of the great monsters, one of the great psychopaths in human history, Adolf Hitler. And he was far from a vegetarian. And obviously, he was on the opposite side of the universe when it comes to ahimsa, right? I mean, if there's somebody who is not into ahimsa, it was Hitler. Okay, but now I want to reveal some things about Rynn, the playwright, and the commitment that I made to basically help his plays get you know, the kind of recognition they deserve. This is a troubling anecdote, okay? So as Estella and I would go around in key places and do a reading or act out one of Rynn's plays, we really decided that in his plays there is something called TMI in a certain way. Does everyone know TMI? Too much information? So you're all muted, so I'll just talk on. So in his plays about these pivotal world-class personalities who were vegan, I'll just go over the list again. So it's Pythagoras, the Buddha, Count Leo Tolstoy, and Kellogg, and Da Vinci, and so on. One thing that I found problematic, Rynn revealed their characters, historical characters, with a harsh spotlight. So, for example, he revealed a lot about Leonardo da Vinci that is not flattering or, let's say, commensurate with promoting veganism through the plays. Okay? And so I went back to Rynn's brother, who was in charge of his estate. And I asked permission, Chris, as you know, to edit these short plays to make them more appealing, because they demonstrate some of the wonderful things about the person's vegan beliefs and vegan philosophy, like, let's say, Da Vinci, you know. But when the play also talks about Da Vinci's sexual kind of perversity, and the fact that Da Vinci loved animals so much that he hated humans. You know, Leonardo da Vinci was happy to create some of the greatest war machines in the Middle Ages, you know, and he did this because he was, as he said, I kind of hate human beings because they're so cruel. And so to this day, I cannot get permission to edit the plays, and therefore we're not reading any more of them. I mean, that's a fact. And I hope that the plays carry his vegan messages. But for myself, I'm not willing to read them word for word. And even Estella agrees that we want to edit out some of the historical stuff so that the play can be more entertaining and enjoyable. You know, you get the truth, and it has a bright side and a darker side. Well, that's the darker side. If anybody wants to really learn from a master historian and philosopher, pick up one of these big, thick books that Rynn wrote, and sit down with a lot of food supply, a big food supply, and plan to spend many hours, you know, reading. If it's okay, I would like to conclude this memoriam with a simple moment of silence, and then we can move past it and get on with our event. So if you would all just join me in a moment of silent tribute to one of the great vegan philosophers and writers, Rynn Berry.